Well, joining me now from New York is Mark Meirowitz, a foreign policy analyst and professor at the State University of New York Maritime College. Mark, welcome. Great to have you on Prime Time. Now, the U.S. President, Donald Trump, says that the talks are paused because of the funeral. Would you say that Washington is showing restraint by this? And just how much breathing space was Iran handed?
I mean, it's hard to know. What does one have to do with the other? I think that was a very good faith effort on the part of President Trump, as was the good faith effort on the part of the president to begin the diplomacy. So I think to me, it's a very positive from the president. And I haven't heard anything from President Trump. We had the only interruption was we had America 250 celebrations in the United States. But other than that, haven't heard anything about the president pausing anything. He wants this to move ahead. He does say that he wants the diplomacy to succeed. And, the question is, what is the level of patience in terms of how long that will go on? But I think that was a very generous gesture on the part of the president to pause the talks for the funeral.
And there were also those remarks about not targeting senior Iranian leadership. But after the late Ali Khamenei was killed in U.S.-Israeli strikes, why should Tehran believe any American promise that its leadership is now off limits?
Again, we're dealing with President Trump and President Trump's leadership and direction on this, and one is very hard put to comment on that. But seems to me that the United States, President Trump, has been very forthcoming to have a good faith effort to negotiate with Iran using intermediaries, Pakistan, and so forth. I don't I don't know that it's really a question of promises. It's a question of credibility. I think where the credibility gap is on the Iranian side, because what the president wanted was a commitment on the nuclear part, and he hasn't gotten that. And as far as the Iranians also, they've sort of come up with issues that are really sidetracking the main point, which is Strait of Hormuz and the Lebanon issue. The main issue, from the point of view of the president, is the nuclear issue. And so as long as we don't get that directly on the table, indirect talks, even with good mediators, I think we're sort of stuck. So it's a question of credibility, but I think the belief factor is what it is. I mean, the United States and Iran are sort of in the midst of a war. So question is believing or not believing. I can tell so far, the Iranians are the ones who've been breaking the ceasefire and breaking whatever it is that they were promising to do, even under the MOU. So everybody needs to get back on track.
And now the successor, Mojtaba Khamenei, is yet to be seen in public. How does that leave Iran looking?
It's a tricky question, and I wouldn't know. I don't have enough information to comment. Obviously, we don't. We have his brothers, the other children of Ali Khamenei were there. He wasn't there. What does that mean? We don't know. And in terms of who controls Iran and who is making the decisions, that is one of the great complex questions that we can't know the answer to. I'm sure someone knows the answer to it. Is it the IRGC? Is it the mullahs? Is it Mojtaba Khamenei? We don't know. And that's an important thing to know, because when you reach a definitive agreement, you need to have that agreement from someone who is a leader who can make the commitment to carry through on that, such as Ghalibaf or the others who have been present there. If those, or Pezeshkian, who are the people who can make the promises to lead Iran to make the commitment? And that's an imponderable question, and one that the United States and President Trump has to evaluate.
The Strait of Hormuz remains the pressure point. Now, if Tehran were to threaten shipping again, Can Washington avoid being pulled back into direct conflict?
Well, look, again, we say about the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz, to me, is an extraneous issue. I mean, it's right on everybody's main discussion point, but it's not really the main issue for the Iran-U.S. conflict. This is something that came up in the midst of this whole thing. It's now part of the MOU with Lebanon. And really, there is no basis to what Iran is claiming, and that is to say that they are able to charge tolls or fees to shipping and that traverses that strait. The strait is an international strait. It under international law of the sea, free transit passage of straits is guaranteed. So if they are threatening shipping, that is certainly a violation of international law. If they are mandating service fees or call it what you like, it's still a toll. That's also violative of international law, and therefore it cannot be supported by the other nations, the ones who are using the strait, or the rest of the world. And so if they threaten again, as your excellent question provides, it is possible that the United States will be brought back into the conflict. And what a shame would that be? Because the idea of working on these negotiations is to resolve the main issues. And the main number one issue is nuclear. That's what President Trump has said. And that's the one that needs to be solved. The sidetracking and diversion of the Strait of Hormuz is deliberately a diversion on the part of Iran. And so we need to stop that. It's hard to do. Once that opened up that can of worms or that Pandora's box, it's very hard to do that.
And now,
Because the world is
sorry to
for the
interrupt there.
to go.
But you've pointed out rightly so that Lebanon is now also part of the interim deal. With this parallel, separate process that U.S. Is conducting with Lebanese government and Israel, do you see that Iran might pressure the U.S. to somehow involve Hezbollah in the end? And do you see Israel as being receptive to such an arrangement?
Well, that is a fantastic question, but think about it. The MOU has Lebanon listed in no less, perhaps more than 3 times in the MOU. Now, one wonders, what does this have to do with the solution of the crisis on the nuclear? And I would say this: Iran could easily stop Hezbollah from doing what it does, which is terrorism. So your question about what could happen on that, look, I turn to President Ayun of Lebanon. He says, I want the rest of the world to stop interfering with Lebanon and let us work this out. And Lebanon and Israel entered into a framework agreement, and I think it's 40 or 45 years since they ever had an agreement of any kind. So they're making progress. But where is it debatable or negotiable for the future of Lebanon or the future of Israel, or the citizens who live in that area near Lebanon, to be able to all of those people, Lebanese, Israelis, to live in peace, so long as Hezbollah is operative and supported by Iran? So you just have to basically kind of like close your eyes and just pretend that that's not an issue. But then the Iranians put it front and square into the agreement as a condition precedent, which is what we would say in the law, to do the deal on the nuclear. So that's just got to be put aside and let Lebanon and Israel work this out. That's how it has to be done. Otherwise, there's never going to be a solution. Iran could right now, this minute, give orders to Hezbollah to stop attacking, even to put down its arms, but it's not going to do that because that's its pivot. That's its strong point in the area. So long as we're doing that and we're mentioning Lebanon 3 times in the MOU, I think we're stuck and we need to unstick it. And that's what President Ayun was talking about. And I think he's right, spot on right. And those negotiations between Lebanon and Israel are the right direction to work up a peace for these 2 countries without the interference of Hezbollah.
And Mark, in that vein, if Iran were to exert pressure on Hezbollah to cease their operations against Israel, do you believe that Israel would be receptive to U.S. influence to cease its own operations in Lebanon with the general election coming up?
Well, that is the question of the moment. Clearly, we know that President Trump has put pressure on Israel on a number of issues, and one of them is on Lebanon. He actually said at one point, Israel, stop attacking in Lebanon. And so, yes, I think that is a very big possibility. That could be part of what the negotiation could develop based on the MOU, citing Lebanon 3 times. So maybe Iran will say, all right, we'll make an agreement with Hezbollah. You get Israel to withdraw. And that is a big issue in Israel now in terms of should Israel be relying on those promises and on pressure from the United States. And you're absolutely 100% right in that President Trump is worried about the midterm elections. And he wants to put an end to this whole crisis and have a peace agreement, a definitive agreement before the midterms. And he can't do that so long as Israel and Lebanon are in conflict because of Hezbollah. So this is a tricky catch-22 situation. It's based on credibility. It's based on keeping promises. And I wonder aloud whether when Iran promises something with regard to its terrorist proxy, whether that's a worthwhile promise. The best result is Lebanon and Israel. And, I think Trump has highlighted that. He was pleased with that. And that's the right direction. So I think a lot of it has to do with credibility, with optics. You're showing J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance comes into the room and the Iranians ignore him. I mean, what is this? This is nonsensical. You've got to have direct negotiations between the parties in good faith in order to reach a solution here. If you do that, I think we have hope. But whether we can do it in time for the American election cycle remains to be seen.
And now on those talks, Pakistan is again mentioned as the possible venue for the next round of technical talks. And reportedly, they're supposed to start tackling the nuclear issue. With the process that we've seen so far, do you expect this process, the entire framework, to move forward in that self-imposed 60-day timeline and end up with a comprehensive agreement?
Well, so first of all, in the 60 days, I mean, to me, the reason it's 60 days relates to the War Powers Act in the United States, which, by the way, is not applicable and is not enforceable against any president. No president has ever agreed to be subject to the 60-day limit where you must come back to Congress for approval to continue hostilities. But given that, the president's cabinet members do talk about 60 days, 60 days, 60 days. So that's what that's about. As far as the process is concerned, I think so far, if you can get Pakistan to be the mediator, but in direct talks between the two parties on the nuclear issue with the involvement of the IAEA, they are the gold standard in nuclear inspections, okay? They come in, they know what they're doing, and they have credibility. So if you have that inspections of all the facilities, the problem with the first JCPOA is because you had no anytime, anywhere inspections and the issue of possible military dimensions, which was that the inspectors couldn't come on military facilities. And once you have that, then it's a worthless agreement. If you get an agreement with very stringent inspection standards with IAEA, because I believe Rafael Grossi, when he speaks, the head of the IAEA, I think we listen, and we listen with credibility, okay? So that's what you need to have. If you have indirect negotiations and you have people running here, running there, and nobody's sitting down with anybody else, then you don't have a chance to reach an agreement. Or sit down directly, I think, and talk about the nuclear deal, because that is President Trump's number one, let's say, goal in this thing is to get the enriched material out and to stop the Iranian nuclear program. Now, in the United States, a lot of criticism of that, in that, some even Republicans are saying, well, what happened to the ballistic missiles? What happened to the people on the streets and the protesters and the human rights? And what about the proxies and all of that? Well, again, it's a work in progress, but the president's number one issue is the nuclear. If we can't get around that, if we can't get a good faith agreement on that, then there isn't going to be an agreement. How it turns out after that is imponderable.
Mark, thank you kindly for joining us on Primetime and sharing your insight and analysis.
Pleasure.